I am not an expert in leadership. I'm a student of leadership.
He comes in with that fresh perspective.
I'm coming at the leadership topic through just experience.
I think you can relate to a lot of people in the sense that we're all trying to kind of self-improve.
We're all leaders, whether it's a Girl Scout troop, a leader in their home,
small group of church, whatever you're doing.
a leader of their family.
You're leading something.
That's what Owen does. He eats, drinks, and sleeps leadership.
My belief is people can develop that skill.
He's a natural developer. He's an amplifier. He'll take anybody and make them better.
Woo! I'm getting jacked up now. Here we go. Okay. February 2001. I woke up, it was about 3 a.m. in the morning, couldn't sleep, I was anxious. Came downstairs to my makeshift office on the first floor. We lived in a Cape Cod, and I sat in front of the computer at my desk, and I was just overwhelmed, thinking about where's the next client coming from. My daughter woke up, she was 2. I came up, got her out of the nursery, brought her downstairs because I didn't want her to wake up her mom, Lisa. And I put her in this toddler station, a little weeble wobble thing. She was completely happy in that thing all the time. But then what I did was I got her a bread pan. She loved playing with bread pans. And I gave her a bread pan. She was content. So I turned back to my desk, and I'm lost in that worry, that anxiety, worried about where my next client's going to come from. And I didn't even realize she had cut herself on the bread pan. And there was blood everywhere. And then in that moment, I realized that I was so consumed with the grind and the hustle of being in business. Over the next 7 years, if you were to look at a mountain range, the top of a mountain range, that was my business. I was either doing the work or looking for the work. Doing the work, selling the work. And then in 2007, I decided to make a decision to buy a franchise. I was like, they got it all figured out. They got the systems, processes. And I bought a sales training franchise in 2007. I bought it in October 2007. 2 months later, we head into the Great Recession. And I had a choice to make. Do I contract in fear like everybody else? Or do I expand and make a decision not to fail? So luckily, with that franchise came a coach. Came alongside of me, poured into me, and in one of our sessions, he said, Owen, you have got to stop the grind. You have got to get out of the hustle and start focusing on goals and objectives and get hyper-focused. So those principles that he shared with me in business began to give me some success. Here's the mind blower, the part that gets me really jacked up. Those same principles I found were applicable to my family. Whether it's changing family traditions, or I'll share a lot of stories about our family, or whether it's getting some work done around the house, a new addition, or a project, or whether it's a family vacation. So I just have really enjoyed sharing the business principles of planning and leadership, and how that leadership and those principles to set up a family for the year have been successful for us. So I'm going to share the 4 steps and the principles with you today that have helped me have more success in the business and have also helped me have more success with my family. And if you decide to apply these, then you too can be a better leader, success in your business, and a better leader and have success in your home. So before I give you step 1, this is the step that most people miss. We get so excited about planning, whether we're planning a quarter, planning a week, planning a year, and we get all these emotions and we're excited about something new. And we forget step 1, and it's preparation. Yeah, all the steps that we lay out are directly applicable to a family. Whether it's a single parent, a parent, or a couple, it's applicable.
That was the mind blower for me. I was like, oh my word.
Preparation shapes expectations. The first part of preparation is mental preparation. So a few years ago, we opened up a retreat center out in Virginia Beach on 40 acres to take teams out there. And what happened was we started seeing these teams show up and they were so distracted. They weren't engaged. You could just see them glazed over. And I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't get them engaged. Our planning sessions were running longer. We weren't getting a lot of good momentum. Until a couple of years ago, in my living room, I figured it out. So Lisa and I's youngest, his name is Garth, he was preparing for summer camp. And he's got his checklist, and he's going down his checklist. And I'm just observing, and we're helping him kind of get ready. And he's going down his checklist: bug spray, backpack, sleeping bag, rain jacket, extra pair of socks. And I stood back and I looked at him, and not only was he preparing to go to camp, he was mentally already there. He was mentally hiking already, in the canoe, around the fire pit, doing those things. And I was like, that's it. I said, what's happening is people don't mentally prepare well for sessions or any kind of planning. So I immediately came back and we put in place a packing list for the teams that were coming out to the retreat center. They were not spending the night. They were not camping at the retreat center, but it was this metaphor that rung with them to help them mentally prepare for when they got there. And we began to get more momentum in the meetings, and we began to get better success in the meetings just because they were mentally prepared. I want to share the next piece with you. Pre-work, or we can just call it homework. How about that? We naturally don't take time to reflect. We are so focused on the future. We're so focused on what's in front of us. What's next? What's the next milestone? What's the next goal? What are we going to accomplish? What are we going to dominate? We're so focused on the future, we don't pay any attention to the past. So when I learned that through this time, I said, we have got to bring that into planning. We've got to force people to reflect. Because when we reflect, write this down, it's really good. When we reflect, it connects the dots to the future. When we reflect, it connects the dots to the future. Here are 3 very practical questions that I would encourage you to use with your participants, your teams, whoever's going to join you. We give these out a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance. The earlier the better, because it allows them to get their wheels turning. The first question is, what went right? What went right? And we have everybody bring their answers to these questions for these meetings. The second question is, what went wrong? Very practical question. Opens up a great discussion. And the third one is, I love this one. What did we learn? What did we learn as a team, as an organization, as a family? What did we learn? There's other great questions, but these are 3 very practical questions. And what happened is when I brought these in and we started implementing them for our planning sessions that we were facilitating, we got more momentum. So now we got mentally prepared momentum. Now we got pre-work or homework momentum to get their wheels spinning. So we open up those meetings and we get a lot better result and success. So we've got mental and pre-work under preparation. Ready for number 3? The thing about leadership and communication in general, I love this part, is that we all operate in our default modes. We communicate the way we want to be communicated to. Logistics. What the heck does logistics mean? Sounds simple, right? Like common sense. Here, let me show you something. Pretty simple analogy. I give you an address to drive to, but you have no GPS, you have no detailed map. I'm going to attempt to draw a car. All right, this is you, this is where you're going, no GPS, no detailed map. This is probably pretty much what your route's going to look like. Versus, I give you the same address. You get in that same car, and you're going to go straight there. And what I found was logistically, people were not preparing well, so they were coming in frustrated, mentally disconnected. I'll tell you a real story. Last month, the owner of the company and myself thought we did a pretty good job setting expectations and preparing the team. And about 3 days before our planning session, we started getting emails, we started getting text messages, and all these things started flying out. And there were things like, where do we park? Where exactly is this building? Is there going to be coffee? Is there going to be breakfast? Simple logistical things that were mentally making them frustrated. Logistics. Preparation, mental, pre-work, and logistics. Before I show you the last one in this step, I'm going to pull all these together. So when I opened up, I said to you, my mind-blowing learning experience when I got introduced to these principles was they are directly applicable to a family, into my home. I would not be here unless I had an amazing spouse of that support. So that's been a key. You know, she's really my business partner. You know, she's my family partner. She is my business partner. She would tell you she's not, but she is. Imagine you walked in my living room 3 months ago. You walk in my living room and you see me at the kitchen counter, on a computer, on an Airbnb website. And you see me in there, and then you see me 2 hours later in there, and I still haven't booked anything. Anybody know what I'm talking about? I'm lost in the Airbnb world, but I do have a lot of new wish lists created. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to find mentally the best location, quiet, peaceful, less distractions. Mentally. When Lisa and I go away, we go away actually this same time every year. As a matter of fact, we leave Friday for our annual session. We call it the summit, right? The meeting of the leaders. Our pre-work that we've been working on for a week now is what do we want to accomplish while we're gone for 2 or 3 nights? What do we want to accomplish as a couple? What do we want to accomplish as a family? What do we want to accomplish in our businesses, both owning our own businesses? And we use this agenda to guide. And we even have questions for the drive to the location, like, you know, those couple questions. We're even doing that, right? So we're priming for the weekend, pre-work, homework. But then comes logistics. Remember the Airbnb listing? And I'm sitting over here 2 hours later, still haven't booked a place, but maybe now I found one. Now I start digging into after I do the reviews, now I'm digging into the accommodations. Why the accommodations? I want to know if the beds are comfortable, but I want to know, is there a coffee maker? Is there a stove? Is there an oven? Is there a toaster? I want to know these things logistically. Probably the most important one for this weekend is there a wine opener? Very important. So I want to know logistically, just like the example I gave you from last month with a company, I want to know, we don't want to get there and then have to get distracted and go find something. Mental pre-work logistics. Mental pre-work logistics. The last one is engaging a facilitator. Engage a facilitator. A few years ago, I learned a valuable lesson. Been working with a client for over a decade. A lot of wins, a lot of successes. We're really good friends. It was time for their strategic planning session. And of course, I've always run it for them. But this year was different. And what I found was I wasn't able to challenge thought. I'd gotten mixed up in the politics, in the relationships, in the bureaucracy of all of what's happening in this organization. So I go to my friend, the CEO, and I'm like, I'm not the guy to run this session. So we both decide, let's go out and get an external facilitator. Very humbling for me. So I get to participate in the meeting and sit back and watch as this facilitator came into this meeting with no bias, not wrapped up in any relationships, not wrapped up in any politics or any of that stuff. And I watched him challenge thought and challenge the people around the table. As a matter of fact, there was one time, I'll never forget it. I was at the conference table, CEO was to my right, facilitator was standing in front of us at a whiteboard, the rest of the team was kind of around this way. And the CEO said something, and the facilitator, just let me remind you before I tell you what just happened. They didn't know each other at all. CEO says something, facilitator looks at him and said, that's BS. Just like that. And I was like, that's a little much. But what was happening was the facilitator was calling it out. That's what he was hired to do. You see, write this down, it's really good. He was unapologetically honest. He was unapologetically honest. One of the best sessions we've ever had. Engaging an outside facilitator. I'm going to show you two numbers. So the International Association of Facilitator found that 85% of organizations and companies that bring in outside facilitators to run meetings have more strategic clarity. Another report was done by McKinsey, and they said 15% of organizations that do not use facilitators lose productivity. 15% of productivity in a meeting. So engaging a facilitator. So let's just review this. Preparation, number one. Preparation shapes expectations. The 4 pieces in here are mental, pre-work, logistics, and engage in a facilitator. You want to see number 2?
You had a group of business owners sitting around the fire talking about business, and as the evening got later, the fire got bigger, the dialogue deepened, and they started talking about like real impactful things like family and balance and things like that. And it wasn't me. It was the environment. It was the fireplace or the fire pit. It was the being outdoors under the stars at night. And so that's what inspired this. What I saw take place when these business owners got out of their environment in a little bit of a way, they got more creative, they got more clarity, and then that weekend around the fire pit that night, it was quite magical.
Launch. Launch the discussion. Lead with precision. Woo, I'm getting jacked up now. Here we go. Launch the discussion. Lead with precision. Launch the discussion. Lead with precision. Let me cover these 2. Alignment. We're launching the discussion. We need to be aligned. Very practical, very simple. I'm going to give it to you now. You want to write this down. It's really good. I like to open up meetings this way, and it sounds just like this. We don't all have to agree, but we need to leave committed. We need to leave committed. We don't all have to agree, but we need to leave committed to each other. Committed to the vision, committed to the mission, committed to whatever we figured out in this meeting. Alignment. Very simple, very practical way to open up a meeting. And the second piece is environment.
You had a group of business owners sitting around the fire talking about business, and as the evening got later, the fire got bigger, the dialogue deepened, and they started talking about like real impactful things like family and balance and things like that. And it wasn't me. It was the environment.
And that Friday afternoon, early evening, when they started arriving at the location, I saw them coming in with their distractions, with their phones, with their concerns, all the fires that were still burning. As they began to spend more time in that environment, they began to relax a little bit more, less distractions, not concerned about the fires as much. But what happened was the magic when we went outside.
There's something about being outdoors around a fire. I mean, I don't know the science behind it, right? But even if my son and I need to have a difficult conversation, I'll bring them out and we'll get around the fire. And it's just, it creates an open environment. It creates a more communicative environment. There's something about being outdoors and around a fire. And what I've done is just tried to marry up the two for teams and organizations.
You see, we were in this little cottage. We were a couple hundred yards from the Chesapeake Bay. And back there on the Chesapeake Bay, it's calm. So we started wandering outside to the fire pit. Now, just imagine with me, crisp, cool air on a January evening, right on the water, canopy of stars. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. We light a fire. And what happened that evening was the conversations that started around that fire pit were all about business, because that's what they were there for. It was all about business. But as the evening rolled, we kept bringing driftwood in, stoking that fire. Conversation changed. And the conversation got personal. It got deeper. I'm just sitting back watching this. They started talking about family and balance and really what was going on in their business and in their lives. And it just naturally happened around a fire pit. It wasn't me. It was a fire pit. It was the environment they were in. This is what inspired us to open up our retreat center. Creating an environment for people to have the freedom of thought. Write that down, it's really good. An environment, a different environment from the conference room and the fluorescent lights, creates a freedom of thought. More clarity, more creativity. It's amazing what happens. Happened by mistake for me. Alignment, environment. You ready for the next one? Core outcomes. How many of us in this room get stressed out about a to-do list? It's okay to raise your hand. Okay, me. All right, imagine a to-do list for a year. How would you do with that? So, about 2 months ago, I have a team that I'm working with, and they're around a conference table in my office, and down here on this end, my whole wall is a whiteboard. Love that thing. And we're about 2 hours in this session. And this whiteboard wall, is completely full. What went well? We'd gone through our pre-work. What went wrong? What did we learn? And we just kept going. Did we hit our goals? Where did we miss? What's the greatest opportunities? What's our biggest challenges? Just kept going and going. What new ideas do we have? What goals do we want to accomplish this year? What objectives do we want to accomplish this year? Where can we make the biggest impact this year? The entire wall was full. And one of the shareholders, this is actually funny, raised his hand. He's like, "Hey, Owen, can I come up to the wall?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, this is your meeting. Like, come to the wall." And he gets up and he walks over to the wall and he says, "Owen, I don't know where to start. We have this massive to-do list." And I said, "David, I get it." I said, "Remember when you came in, I told you about this roadmap?" I said, "Just give me another hour. Trust the process and you will have more clarity." So we start as a team looking at all these to-dos, and I go to the team, this is really good, write it down, and I say, what are 3 to 5 of these things right here on the board that can have the greatest impact on the company? What are the 3 to 5 outcomes that will be our largest levers and have the biggest impact on the organization? So they started discussing it. They started challenging thought. They started disagreeing. And they started whittling it down. And they kept going. And I kept pressing. And they kept going. And I kept pressing until we got it down to 4. Now we're getting a little bit more narrow focus. core outcomes, 3 to 5 for the year, that can make the biggest impact in the organization, our biggest levers in the organization. So I started to see them relax a little bit. I started to see the team relax a little bit more, but they were still stuck. And it's this next step that helped them get unstuck. Probably what I'm most excited about is we're going to be talking about business planning, very important in leadership, leading these business planning sessions. But the most important piece that I'm going to weave in is about how these principles and these steps with business planning directly are applicable to a family.
The work I do, I mentioned, is so fulfilling because we really do feel it's impact work. So it feels good.
I started to see the team relax a little bit more, but they were still stuck. And it's this next step that helped them get unstuck. And I call it the 11-week march. The 11-week march. To me, it's simple. People who have not done this process before struggle with it. But this is what it sounds like. I just keep it simple and practical so everybody can apply it. And I go to one core outcome, and I go to the group and the team and I say, what is the very next step that needs to happen to release that core outcome, get us working towards the core outcome, get the flywheel turning? What is the very next thing we need to do to get moving towards that core outcome? Because all of us start overthinking it, and we're out third, fourth quarter when we just need to take this next step. So I got silent. It was probably 2 seconds, felt like 2 minutes to me. And then one person spoke up and they said, XYZ, we need to do XYZ. That's the very next step we need to do to start moving towards that outcome. And just like that, it was like turning on a spigot. And that spigot got turned on and it just started flowing. And then what they did was they started laying out all the things that needed to be done those 11 weeks towards that core outcome. The 11-week march. The 11-week march. So let's review. Number 1, preparation. Number 2, launch. Woo, love that. Launch the discussion, lead with precision. The third one, accountability. Accountability inspires capability. Accountability inspires capability. Accountability inspires capability. I'm a big fan. These are important words. These are my words. I see so many people, organizations, team members operate and not at their full capability. They don't operate at what they're capable of doing. Accountability inspires capability. Oh my word. What if we expected excellence? Let that sit in. I mean, as leaders, people expect excellence. I'm not saying perfection. What if we expected excellence? Accountability inspires capability. Let me show you by stick figures what accountability looks like. There's a difference between accountability and responsibility. There is a difference between accountability and responsibility, especially for this planning. You see, the core outcome, accountability is ownership of the core outcome. Whoever's accountable to the core outcome owns the core outcome. Whoever is responsible is typically laying out the 11-week marches, doing the things, the tasks, the to-dos. I'll show you how this works. If you were in my session in the annual Van Syckle Summit meeting last year, a core outcome that came out of that was a hot tub for the year. We're going to get a hot tub. Okay? Let's just keep it simple. And you see, in that, I end up being the owner of that one. So I owned the core outcome of having the hot tub at the house by the end of the year. That was the core outcome by the end of the year. But see, I wasn't responsible for the core outcome, the things that had to be done. It was, in this case, the subcontractors, the concrete guy, the electrician, those people but I, owning the core outcome, had to report on our 11-week marches and frequency, I'm getting there, that was on track, right? So there is a difference between accountability and owning the core outcome and responsibility, the things that need to be done. Here's where organizations miss it. This could be the leadership team that has ownership of the core outcomes that are defined. And then they want to also be responsible for them rather than delegating the responsibility, the to-dos for the 11-week marches. There's a difference between accountability and responsibility when planning. There are two practical steps inside of accountability. The first one, scorecard. Oh, now we're talking. Visibility creates accountability. Visibility creates accountability. And you all probably know this. We can improve it if we measure it. Maybe it's just a reminder for you. So looking at core outcomes and 11-week marches and things like that, and having visibility into those frequently creates accountability. The second step is frequency. Frequency. All right, so I'm keep this one short. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'll elaborate on it a little bit for you. Okay, here we go. Frequency. Here's what I see. See it all the time. Organizations, companies, and leaders that look at core outcomes and 11-week marches once a month move a whole lot slower than organizations and leadership teams that are looking at it once a week. Visibility creates accountability. Let me shift back over application to family, application to home, frequency. I took business planning concepts and steps and principles, and we directly applied them to our family, our personal family, in what we want to accomplish the upcoming year. And what I found out was the principles and steps are directly applicable to a family who wants to set up their year for success. If you were to walk into our home on a Sunday afternoon, there's a window, you would see us around the counter looking at the week. We call it the legacy gathering. It used to be called a legacy meeting, but the kids felt that was too constricted and it was like a business meeting. So we were like, all right, we'll just do a gathering, right? So we're going to do a legacy gathering. So we get together, we compare our calendars, we look at the week, then we try to go another level deeper and say, hey, are the things we're doing this week aligned with goals and objectives? Frequency, once a week. Another frequency you see, or would see in our home, is you would see the monthly summit meeting. The monthly summit meeting is where Lisa and I sit down and we look at, majority of the time, finances. We're looking at reconciled accounts. We're looking at budgets and spending plans. We're looking at retirement accounts. We're looking at, are we on track? Core outcomes. Are we on track for savings? Things like that. That's on a monthly. Then you have your 11-week marches. So Lisa and I will also make it away every quarter, 1 or 2 nights, and we call them marker weekends. This is where we look and see, how did we do on that 11-week march? Where are we with core outcomes? And we laid that out on the annual plan. Frequency, just like inside of an organization. So step 3, accountability. And in those two practical steps, scorecard and frequency. Very important. Let's look at number 4.
One of our processes challenges how people think.
Owen very much takes the inspire you to act in a certain capacity and to have a rationale for it. And when you do something, you have a purpose and there's an agenda.
Helping people figure out how they want to make change, whether it's in their company or in their personal life.
And in this day and age, things are changing all the time. It's important to have somebody with that perspective.
Let me tell you what number 4 it is. Navigation. Navigation. Skillful navigation determines destination. Man, that's good. Skillful navigation determines destination. In December 2019, you would have found me again excited about the upcoming year, doing some planning, but hearing these whispers of a virus in China. Fast forward 3 months, I'm sitting at that same conference table that I explained earlier. I'm sitting here, client's sitting here, we're just having some chat. My phone rings, Lisa calls. March 2020. And she said, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What's going on?" I could tell something was wrong. And she said, "Schools just got canceled for the year." And I was like, "Okay, I'll be home in 30 minutes." And I hung up the phone, and it was this eerie feeling. And I told the client, and he had this blank stare. He didn't know how to respond. So within 5 minutes, I'm in the truck driving home. That's when the gravity hit. The unknown, the fear. What's going to happen to businesses? What's going to happen to the economy? What's going to happen to retail? Where were you when you heard about a national shutdown? And then for me, it clicked in, and it was a similar feeling, like a deja vu of the Great Recession 2 months after I'd purchased that franchise, and making that pre-decision of what I was going to do. Skillful navigation determines destination. It's very much like a sailboat. Navigation. You see, we cannot control the wind, but we can adjust the sails.
We can adjust the sails. How are you preparing navigation in your planning? The only constant is change. How are we making pre-decisions now on what ifs? Economy, whatever affects your business and your industry. Navigation. Let's review the steps and then wrap up. But before I do, let's review these. Number 1, preparation. Number 2, launch. Number 3, accountability. And number 4, help me out, navigation. Ladies and gentlemen, follow me, please. Launch, accountability, and navigation. Plan. Let me wrap up. So, I told you at the beginning when I opened up about how I bought a franchise in 2007 and the Great Recession hit. What I didn't tell you was there was a sticker on my desk. And the sticker said, I choose not to participate in the recession. You see, we have a choice to lead. We have a choice to lead our teams. We have a choice to lead our departments, our organizations, our businesses. We have a choice to lead our homes. We have a choice to lead our families. It is hard being a leader. The thing is, we are all leaders. Whether you're leading a Girl Scout troop, Cub Scout troop, small group of church, whatever you're doing, you're leading something which requires responsibility. So I'm asking you, what will you choose? Will you choose to lead? If you choose to lead, then you will have a more successful team, have more success in your home and family, and you will make a long-lasting impact as a leader. Thank you very much.